So pâte sucrée or tart dough. This is a sweet tart dough. Now this, unlike the pies that we're going to be making and the pie dough that we make, this is not a flaky or a mealy. This is an enriched dough. And we say the word enriched primarily because, well, that little guy right there, the egg. The egg is going to actually enrich this and bind it all together and give another protein that's going to coagulate and kind of do its thing. So when that happens, it becomes kind of a little bit null and void. It's not as flaky. There are some options for how to get it flaky, but we'll get to those later. So we're going to start with our room temperature butter. And interestingly enough, as opposed to what we do with pies, where we're so worried about mixing it too much, we actually want to cream this almost like a cookie dough. More importantly, like the sugar cookie dough. We don't need it to be light and fluffy. We just need the sugar and everything to be basically worked in completely, make it nice and smooth. So we'll work this sugar in. Once that sugar and that butter gets worked together, we will add our egg, just the one, and then we're going to stop it. We're going to scrape the bowl down. We want to make sure that everything gets well incorporated. There we go. Back onto the mixer. That's all nice together. We're then going to incorporate our flour. Now we have bread flour and pastry flour in this case. This allows for a little bit of extra brownness, a little extra texture, and of course the AP flour lowers the protein content so it doesn't shrink too much. And you'll notice as you're looking through into the bowl, you'll see that it starts to come together. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be paying very close attention to at what point I can actually pull this dough from the machine. I want it to just barely come together because I don't want to overwork it. If I overwork this dough, it will become susceptible to shrinking. So there we go. Dough is all out. Get that off the paddle. Take a look down in that bowl right there, and you'll see just a few little dry, clumpy spots, and that's acceptable because what we're going to do here is we're going to come to our surface. We're going to bring that dough out. Put that on the side. We're going to bring that dough together by hand from here on out. We don't want to overwork the dough. So using our parchment paper here works really, really well. And in the bakery here at the school, we actually make our dough just like this, our pâte sucrée dough. And we store it on sheet pans with parchment paper on top, flat. And the reason why we do that is to make sure that it's always ready for us to go. So in this case, I'm going to take my tart dough and I'm going to slide it into a Ziploc bag that's been labeled. And I'm going to put this in the fridge, but you'll notice flattening it out. This is going to make it much easier for us to roll out that tart dough later. I don't have to roll out a ball, I can roll out a disc. We'll put that in the fridge and we'll come back to that later. All right, so welcome back. We've got our tart dough here. It's been refrigerated. And you'll notice when it first comes out of the refrigerator, it cracks and breaks a little bit. And that's actually a good sign. That means we didn't develop a bunch of gluten. I'm going to take all of my pieces and stack them on top of one another. And then I'm going to let the heat of my hand kind of bring that together. And in layers, we typically dice up the dough a little bit and then we bring it together. It just speeds up the process. You don't want to work with the dough at room temp, and you also don't want to work with the dough the minute you make it. Let it rest. It really does make for an easier time rolling out. So, bread flour once again onto our surface here. I can go ahead and flatten this out a little bit. I've got my rolling pin ready to go. And we're going to start just like we did during the pie dough. We're going to start in the middle and work our way out. Turn it 45 degrees each time. So we'll start in the middle, up, down, turn, up, down, turn. And every once in a while, just dust up. And you can even invert. Okay. So up, down. And if you keep turning it, you end up with a round piece of tart dough. Oh, little rip there. It's okay. Never fear. We won't probably need that part anyway. Today we're doing a 9-inch tart pan with a removable bottom. And we're actually doing this as an unbaked pie. I know it's in a tart, but unbaked pie, meaning, once again, the product that goes in it is finished, or maybe it just has to chill, but it doesn't have to go in the oven. So obviously, if it's an unbaked pie, you're gonna have to completely bake the shell. So we're gonna show you today how to blind bake. This is a standard tart ring with a removable bottom. It's nice. We've got our tart dough rolled out here. This is the pat sucre dough. I'm going to take my rolling pin. I'm going to pull my dough up onto the rolling pin. And then when I lift this, I don't want the rolling pin to push down. I just want it to help lift up and over. And then the next step, this is kind of the important part. You want to pull up on the dough and allow the dough to fall inside the actual tart pan down low. Okay? Really, really important that you let that fall down inside and not just let it rip off the edge. So once that gets in there, okay, now we're gonna go around and we're gonna make sure that we got it in all these nooks in the bottom, because you don't want it to be rounded like so. You want it to be sharp, clean edges, okay? So I'm gonna go around with my thumbs and make sure that we're all in there. And then the habit that I've seen people do is they roll this way. Well, that's okay, but I will tell you that the back of a knife does much better. And as you go around, because what sometimes happens when you use a rolling pin is it pushes the dough down. Now I can go back around and adjust, make sure everything looks good. Everything looks really good. Happy with that. We'll take our fork. Lots of holes. We don't want any major bubbling. All the way around. Take the time to be super attentive to details here. Okay? And now I can take the beans, drop those down, and what I do is I use parchment paper and I just crumple it up. We're going to put this in the oven for about 25 minutes. Usually at about 20 minutes I'll pull the beans and let the middle brown up a little bit more, and then let it go for another 7 or 8 minutes and we'll be fine. Alright, so we'll get that in the oven. Alright, so we've got our tart dough here. It's about 17, 18 minutes so far. We're going to bring it down and remove our beans. And this is a good color. I'm actually happy with this. I don't really need to go any further in because what's going to happen is the outside edge is going to burn up really quickly. Now, you could do tin foil around that because you realize that radiant heat, like what you're learning in Food Science class with Chef Zink right now, that radiant heat is coming down and hitting those edges, and you want to make sure that you don't burn up the crust on the sides. It'll make it too delicate. So at this point, we're going to say that that is done and ready for us to make another beautiful unbaked pie or unbaked tart.